Hi there. I have the privilege of having JB Kempf with me. How are you doing, JB?
I'm doing great. How are you, Angelo?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you so much for taking time to speak with me. So it's over 9 p.m. your time in Paris, France, and it's noon for me here in Canada. Lovely to speak with you. And JB, what do you do today? What's your role? Let's pretend that nobody knows you.
Um, yeah, so I'm the president of the VideoLAN nonprofit, who's the nonprofit who's editing the software called VLC Media Player, which is a software that can play any type of video. But I'm also like contributor of numerous open source projects, including FFmpeg, X264, some libraries that are necessary to play DVDs, Blu-rays, and some video infrastructure. I've created a few companies around those open source projects. And I'm also like an entrepreneur. I've started a few startups and I have a new one called Kyber. So pretty busy.
Yeah, it looks like you have been pretty busy, and it looks like you have done a few small contributions to open source and a few key projects that people take care of. Absolutely fantastic. And but going back in time, how did you get involved with technology? How did the computers appear in your life?
So my dad was a teacher, a professor at university, right? So in the 90s, right, I had access to computers earlier than most people, right? So I think the first 5 or 6 I was playing video games on those machines, right? But that was 1999, right? 1989, right? So quite old. And then when I was in first year of middle school, right, around 11 years old, I was in a special school because I was living in Florence, in Italy, and I had like the math teacher made us like program for the first time, right? So I did that when I was around 11, and that's probably the first time I got into that.
That's fantastic. And moving forward a little bit, you went through university studies and you did a master's degree as well. And I think part of the focus that you did doing your master's degree, you're doing some work with assembly programming. And I think you mentioned that you did some work with Itanium and CPU and doing some parallel programming kind of work. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the influence the university and also your master's degree may have had in your career.
Yeah, in France there is those weird engineering school which are like very difficult school to get into, and for 2 years after the end of your high school, you spend like 2 years working a lot on math and physics, like almost non-stop, and that gets you to the top engineering schools. I got into one called the École Centrale Paris. And while I was in high school, I did a ton of things on my computers. Spent too much time over there, doing a lot of things, a bit of hacking, part of Juarez and so on, right? So that's what I was doing when I was at university. I didn't do too much programming until I got into university. And when I was in university, I started doing quite a bit. And I managed at the École Centrale Paris the networking nonprofit who was managing all the campus networking. And this is probably like the biggest impact in my life ever, because this is how I got into VLC, because VLC was a student project at that university managed by the people from the network, right? So when I arrived in 2003 over there, this is the time I got into VLC. And yes, in the last year, I did a second degrees, right? I had like a second, but like my main master degree was at the École Centrale Paris, but I did indeed a second master degree in parallel in a nearby university around HPC, right? High performance computing and architecture of computers. And there, indeed, I did like my final internship was writing assembly for those very weird Itanium processors that don't exist anymore.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to go straight into some of the work you did with VLC, right? So like you took the leadership of VLC around 2006. And what was the single biggest change that you introduced that allowed VLC to scale to over 1 billion downloads, right? It's really hard
Yeah.
to even
So
comprehend 5 billion, right? Such a huge number.
yeah. So the it's so this was a student project that started in the late 90s, right? And the goal was never to do an open source media player, right? The goal was to find good reasons to upgrade the network because the students wanted a faster network to play video games in, and sending video on the network seemed a good idea, right? It seems obvious, right? But like 1995, right? Like the normal computer was a Pentium 60 or 486 DX at 16 megahertz, right? So doing video decoding in real time on a computer was like unheard of, right? And extremely weird. But you know, like they wanted to do that, and they managed to do that. And the idea was to stream satellite directly on the network. But like every year, it was another team of students. And the thing is, the software grew and became more and more complex. And then it almost like fell down under its own weight of technical debt, right? And it was not possible anymore, right? Also because the university changed a bit the lessons, and it was a lot harder than it used to be. So you arrive with like each new generation of students arrive on the project in September, and couldn't do anything useful until March, right? And this was not possible, right? So what I did was mostly to remove the project from and transition it from a student project to a professional project. And so I created, it took me around 2 years. I created a nonprofit called VideoLAN, which I'm the president of since the conception. But look, mostly I went back to recruit some of the older contributors, the best ones, to work as young professional on VLC on their free time, right? And that was like one of the big steps, right? And I did a ton of things around community outreach, listening to the user, a ton of legal IP, design, website, and so on, right? So I spent quite a bit of time on that, and making a community that wasn't just students, but people who would stick around. And so this is like the first big transition I did around 2008. Well, 2006 to 2008, actually.
That's fantastic, and such a successful endeavor, right? So that's incredible. And you know,
Yeah.
so if looking at a VOC, it's famous for universal support, right? So there's a how does the VideoLAN team, like you manage you got a whole bunch of key contributors helping this, but how does the VideoLAN team practically manage the complexity of keeping up with so many codecs and proprietary format while operating open source NGO, right? How do you handle that?
Yeah, there were a few, I'm not going to say genius moves, but like clever moves done very early in the project. And one of them was to create modules, right? And by creating modules, like everything you add is a module in VLC, right? A normal VLC, 600 modules, right? So you don't, when you want to add a new feature, you add a new module, right? You want a new codec, and you don't need to understand what is happening in the core, right? And this, they did that not because they thought it was a good idea, right? It was a practical thing because like at that time, recompiling the whole VLC took too much time when they wanted to, right? So it was a breakage mostly for modular, but that managed to keep the complexity way down, right? So you could have someone who arrived and contribute and went away, right? Because the core team of VLC had always been between 2 and 10 people. And else it would be impossible to manage because the complexity would be too high, right? So the fact that it was a lot of modules allowed people to, right, to do things around that, and that worked quite a bit. So that's the first thing. The second thing is like the non-profit is very efficient, right? Very low bullshit, very direct, very, I'm not going to say dictatorial, right? But like we take decisions very quickly, right? Everything that is not technical, like we meet twice a year and we do everything in 2 hours and we talk about everything, right? So like, and I'm pushing for that, right? A lot of large non-profits, or a lot of open source projects spend too much time discussing about the perfect, right? And perfect doesn't exist, right? So we are very, very pragmatic. And this is like type of culture that I push forward, and change, I think, the project for the best.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, well, you're very pragmatic as an organization. Also, the concept of modularity, right? That kind of reduce the complexity and help to get everybody moving in the right direction here. And you founded the VideoLabs to work with major clients like Meta, Google, Netflix, and others. How did you manage the transition from a non-profit open source mindset to creating a successful bootstrapped commercial companies, I should say, around the same ecosystem?
Yeah, actually, it went by itself, right? I know it's weird, right? So I went to the US. I lived in the US for a year, right, in 2007, 2008. I came back to France, and then like during that time, I started having more and more people who wanted me to do something professional, right? So I did like a small services companies, consulting just for myself. And it was starting to take so much of my time, right? And so much time that like I had my normal job, but at night I was doing that again and again and again, right? And this became so big that I said, well, you know what? Like, let's do one ourselves, right? So I took a guy that was working a bit on VLC, who was a student, another friend of mine, and just like say, well, you're going to be employee 1 and 2, and I created the company. And then we started like bootstrapping the company. We had like a few contracts, and it was like very small company became like $100,000 of revenue the first year, and then 200, then 400, then like grew, and it's around $3 million US company per year, profitable, just works. And it's just an accelerator around the community, right? It doesn't own anything on VideoLAN, right? It's just like some people who are helping to pay most of the core. It's difficult because you need to be sure that you're not going to destroy the nonprofit, right? And it's so easy to, especially when you have too much greed, to just care about the money, and then you basically kill it, right? So I managed to not do that, and yeah, it's mostly because I decided like that, but works.
Yeah. So how big is the team, or how big is the community that help with the project these days? Yeah.
I don't know. It's difficult to define, right? But you can say that the core team is around 12 people, right? And this is what you would guess, what I would guess, right? And this core team is doing maybe, I would say, half of the commits of VLC, something like that, maybe a 2/3, right? Some of them are part of VideoLabs, and some of them are not.
Yeah. And so you mentioned money and greed and a few other components as well, but in many ways you turn down multi-million dollars, should say,
Multi-dozens of $1 million.
yeah, acquisition offers, right? So and what principle was more important than the payout, and what does the true independence that your team has, or the community has, they allow your company to achieve? What does it bring to the equation?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? But de facto, like, it's how my parents raised me, right? So I am from a Catholic background, something that, like, I'm not sure that exists outside of Europe, but like leftist Catholics, right? So workers Catholics, right? So something that we don't really see nowadays in Western Europe or in the US. Maybe you can see that in Latin America, right? But like money is not the only goal, right? And that is very weird those days, right? Especially for people from North America, right? But money is not everything, right? And so I'm not against money, right? But I'm against money wrongly acquired, right? So
Mhm.
and this is important. I there are valid business models, and that's okay, right? And there are some which are not, right? And most of the offers I had were just like basically things where I would get the money and then VLC would get destroyed, right? And for me, this is absolutely not okay, right? Because like VLC is not mine, right? It's a community, right? It's multiple people, right? So like I'm not allowed to do that, right? Mm, morally, I'm not allowed to do that, right? So it's like, and I know a few people told me that I had like very strong moral fiber to do that, but it was the right things to do, right? And I'm quite sure of that. So I did what felt right morally, so that when I go at night, I'm happy with myself. And that doesn't mean like I don't like money or I'm a communist or whatever, right? It's just like there are moral ways of making money and there are immoral ones, right? And I refuse the immoral ones.
Yeah, I think it's there are many other benefits as well, right? So it's like you said, money is not the priority, but sometimes it's hard to quantify the benefits of what you have accomplished, right? Which is even way more important than any money that the organization can generate. Does it make sense?
Um, I think so. Yes, it's a bit about that, right? It's also the fact that in my heart, I strongly believe that the search of money for the sake of money
Mhm.
is a destruction of the soul,
Mhm.
and a lot of people start getting to that type of like mental jail, right? Because you
Yeah,
need more money at any cost, right? But I've seen so many people who are a lot richer than I am, right? And well, they're not happy. I'm a happy person, right? And like you can't buy happiness, right?
exactly.
Um, right? People say that like I don't like the fact that like just like um people talk about like happiness and being and money, right? It's like if you're poor, money helps you a ton, right? And that's true,
Mhm.
right? But when you arrive to a certain amount, which is not that high, right? Like you can go and have a good education, you can have a good work, you can have like food every day and somewhere to sleep, right? Which is most of the developer like you're good enough, right? Like
Mhm.
so then sure, like so money doesn't buy happiness. I've seen people who have money, and I know a couple of billionaires, right? At least actually three or four, right? And all of them, right? They they only want more, right? And they don't know why, right? But they want more. Um and this is like this is wrong. So being poor is very difficult, and I've seen that quite well, um, and having money problems. But like as soon as your needs are okay, right, then searching only for money because you want money and because you want to impress the next person, right? You're just going to lose your soul about that. And this is like something important.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and thank you again for all the work you do, and thank you for prioritizing the right things, and thank you for the impact that your projects have had in many people that use them. So it's absolutely fantastic. And also as you're an advisor to many organizations, right? And you see many large engineering organizations, and you deal with a whole bunch of complex organizations. What's the most common blind spot or potentially strategic mistakes that you see some of these technology companies going through? And when it comes to multimedia or deep tech infrastructure, what do you see happening that you can share?
Well, it's very difficult, right? Because like most of the very large companies that we see are actually very good, right?
Mhm.
The issue on multimedia is a very complex field, right? It's complex and complicated, right? You need to know a ton of things, right? And there is so many formats, so many things that goes together. And also, it's difficult math, right, to understand codecs, right? So you need to be very technical, but also very broad. And I see, especially in large companies, people who come around and think that they know everything. And then, like, I remember giving a talk at YouTube and one at Netflix, and I realized that most of those people, like, understand so little compared to what they should understand, right? And
Interesting.
it's not their fault, right? It's just like, it is very difficult. The issue is that there is, and actually there is a bit less lately, but there is a very strong arrogance about like some of those people, right? And they're just like, at some point, like people from Google, which was funny, right? Like they looked down everyone that was not at Google, right? Because they were the most clever, right? Because if you were clever, then you would get into Google. And almost no time they could understand that you could not want to work for Google, right? And this type of hubris like makes it that sometimes you forget about what it is at the bottom. And multimedia is a bit like that, right? There is a lot of technical things to understand that you can brush over, saying, "Yeah, I understand," but then no, you don't. And this is very tricky.
Jean-Baptiste, you know, you're a fantastic developer, engineer.
I'm not.
And you're not?
No,
You're
I'm not
modest.
like I'm a normal guy, right? Like I'm not a very good programmer, right? I've done a ton of programming on a ton of different languages, right? But like in any of those languages, like I wouldn't be not even in the 10% top, right? Um, I am more a maker than a good programmer, and one of the reasons why I moved to being like the VideoLAN president and being affect like the project lead and direction and strategist around, and also CTO of several startups and scale-ups companies in France, is that I'm probably not the best developer, but that's okay, right? Like you cannot be good at everything. I'm a decent programmer, I think. I'm not a great one, but that's okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, totally understand. But you still do programming, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Just for fun?
Yes. But and also like I still maintain quite a few software, right? So I'm doing more reviewing than coding, but it's very often that like you receive a patch set from someone and they don't have time, they don't understand the feedback, they don't finish it, right? But I feel that this is important, right? So there is something that I do quite often, is that I take something and actually merge it and modify it myself, right? But usually, like I keep the copyright for the person, right? But because I don't care about that thing anymore. So yeah, and I do mostly for fun on a few things. Yes, but I'm still doing code and commits on numerous multimedia projects, including VLC, and I'm doing other things on other packages, less known packages, right? So for example, like this summer, I spent a bit of time on the DVD libraries and the Blu-ray libraries. Spent a bit of time like during like the autumn about like something called spatial audio rec, 3D audio rendering, some work on VLC. I maintain software which are in C, in C++, in Go, in Rust, mostly. And all my free time, I do a lot of Zig because I like the language.
Fantastic. So have you been experienced with large language models as well?
Oh yeah, because I am the CTO of a cloud service provider called Scaleway in France, right? And one of the things at Scaleway is that it has deployed thousands of GPU to train models. So I have a bit of knowledge, and I've trained a very simple one, right? Like just to learn. But we've also been toying with VLC to have like LLMs running locally with VLC to do subtitle, transcription, translations, and so on.
Fantastic. And how do you see the overall impact of AI and LLMs in general?
Very complex question, right? We're going to see AI everywhere, and it's going to make almost everyone more efficient by 20-30%. But I don't. It's going to be like a boost, and it's going to change a lot of jobs, but it's not going to change anything, I think, on the society. Well, it's just going to be the same. I don't see the big changes there, right? There is a few jobs which are going to be more complex, right? Like if you are an illustrator or translator, yeah, it's going to be complex. But for so many people, it's just going to output more with the same amount. And we are going to see AI features on every software. Like everything will have some of it.
That's it's like there's so much going on. There's so much conversation, so many questions. It's interesting to see what's happening. And Jean-Baptiste, you lived in the U.S. and you're in France. You're French. Being based in Canada and also having many people in Brazil and some other places. I'm just wondering, what can you tell us about the open source in French and the overall French technology market in comparison to the way the things operate in the US?
Today, you see in Europe, globally, and a bit in Latin America and Africa, a lot of people who do open source for fun and for education purposes. And while in the US, like everything, it's just about like commercial open source, right? There is not many people who do that just for fun anymore. In France, you still have a ton of that in Europe who do it because it's right, because it's funny, because it's interesting, because you like it. You see large projects happening which are around that. So that's, I think, the biggest change, but it's very US compared to the rest of the world, in my opinion.
That's a good comparison there. And you pretty much focus right now in ventures like Kyber, Playruo. Hopefully, I'm saying the names right here. And I think you're doing some work, especially around the seamless cloud gaming experiences. And I'm just wondering, what can you tell us a little bit about some of this experience and some of the most significant technical challenges that you're currently working with as you're pushing these initiatives forward?
Yeah, so I've been working in lower latency in video nonstop, right? And at some point you arrive at like actual real-time latency, right? So zero latency, right? And one of the use cases is about controlling machines, whether they are games or whether they are desktops or computers, but also robots and drones in real time. And Kyber is about that. So it's an open source framework that can do that. And one of the use cases to do cloud gaming and cloud streaming, like Playruo is doing, but you can use that to do a type of team viewer. You can use that also for 3D rendering in distance, but also, and which is very interesting, in drones and remote control of like vehicles and so on. And I really like that.
So how much time do you still dedicate to VLC, considering all the projects that you have on the go?
Very difficult, right? The thing is, like, a ton of things I'm doing, like especially this week, right? I had like, I think I did like 11 public speaking speeches this week because there was a ton of conferences at the same time in Paris, right? So I was running all around. But there is so many things that I do which apply to many of my jobs. Most of these things I do on VLC are profiting Playruo and Kyber, for example. A ton of things I'm doing on open source AI are good for Scaleway and other companies I'm working for, right? So what is sure is that I'm probably going to spend for the next 2 years 80% of my time on Kyber, and the rest is probably something around VLC.
Jean-Baptiste, you managed to create some incredibly important projects and initiatives, and with the help of a community like you described, right? But you prioritize sustainability and team well-being. And how do these priorities integrate with high pressure, right? So resource intensive work and deep tech and high performance computing.
I think that one of the things I like in multimedia, which is also what I like on AI and HPC, is that it's a field that is very mathematical and you need to learn a lot and it advances a lot, right? So, like, I am quite sure I could have made a ton more money doing things that are more startup-y, but they don't interest me. And the thing is, I know that if something is not interesting enough, I'm not going to do it well, right? So I need something that is technically challenging because else, like, this is how I do things, right? And I need my job to be my passion, and it cannot be the other way around, right? So this is my approach, and so that's why I like everything related to deep tech and complex tech. Is it the right way? I don't know. But so far I'm happy. So.
And it's been working for you, right?
So far, yes.
Yep, it's a good approach. And based on your experience bootstrapping companies that serve global clients, right? So, and very complex enterprises, what's the single most critical piece of advice that you have for, aspiring open source entrepreneurs or people who are
work
trying
on
to
some
set up
things
their
that you
company?
like? Like, you're never going to be motivated by something that you don't like, right? And not the one reason that I'm working on VLC, because it's so fun, right? It is so fun to work on the video, right? And that's why I do it, right? So that's very, very important for me, right? And I think that, like, you cannot work on your free time on something that doesn't motivate you and interest you.
So if you like, that's the first step to a successful project.
Yeah.
So if you if you could go back in time and give advice to your younger self when you first start moving forward with some of the projects or the learnings that you have gone through, what would you tell your young JB?
A good question, right? The thing is, I have no regrets, and I think it's
Mhm.
very important to not have regrets, right? Because until you can fix it, it's useless. But you can learn about your mistakes, right? And this is what you should do. Um, I wouldn't have too many, but I think that in a few of my companies and startups, like, I didn't take the sales part strong enough early on, and that, like, gave me a lot of headaches that I could have avoided. But like, you need to learn. Mm. And I learned, but yeah, this, I think, is something that I should have done differently. Um, the rest, no, that's okay. I think. You need to make mistakes that are not too big, um, to learn about. Like, I'm the type of person who needs to do something myself before asking someone else to do it, right? So maybe I'm not the most efficient, right? But that's okay.
So you're dealing with multiple projects, multiple companies. You told me you're not the best programmer, but you do programming. You deal with company issues and community management. And you said it's important to like what you do, right? So of everything that you do on a regular basis, is there a specific area where you feel like gives you more pleasure work on that specific issue or that specific topic, or there's no such a thing?
Um, yeah, I really like strategy and product strategy and
Mhm.
defining and designing architecture where we go, like finding the solution, um, implementing the solution is less funny, I think, for now. Um, so that's basically what I feel the best so far.
Mhm.
Um, but I've learned to do things that I don't like, but are necessary. And I've learned to do them quickly so that it's not too much of a bother. So yeah, so far this is pretty good for me.
So talking a little bit of some of the programming languages. So you mentioned that, I understand you said that you don't think yourself as a top programmer, even though you're much better than a lot of people. You mentioned Zig, you mentioned Go, you mentioned Rust. Is anything specifically any of these languages that excites you?
So I've done C, C++, assembly for x86, for ARM, for Itanium.
C++.
I've done some C++. I've done C# and .NET at university. I've done some Java programming at university, and then Java for Android. Then I did some Objective-C on VLC and VLC for iOS. I did some Kotlin for VLC on Android. I've done some ton of Python, ton of Perl script because that in Bash, because that was all the administration I was doing for a long time. I've done some. I've never done some Ruby actually, seriously, nor any type of like functional programming. I've done a ton of Go and lately a bit of Rust, and now do some Zig. Today, I like my go-to language for anything that is infrastructure and parallelize is Go, right? Because it's a good tool for that. For anything that is real time, it's either Rust or Zig, depending on them. Rust is a better C++ and Zig is a better C, so they're interesting. For most complex projects, Rust is probably more interesting because of all the security and memory management features on the C version. Like when you have a Zig, it's a good replacement for C, right? And so also that's something I'm doing. I think it does a ton of interesting thing. It doesn't do the borrow checker that you have in Rust, so it's not as safe, but it's pretty good.
That's fantastic. And I apologize, but I found incredible that you call yourself not a top programmer, but absolutely fantastic, the knowledge that you bring to the table. And Jean-Baptiste, you mentioned that one key recommendation that you have to the people who are starting or want to do some work is to enjoy or to find something that they like doing, right? But assuming they like the technology, they like the area, and they want to start, they want to learn something. Is there anything specific you'd recommend them to look at when they start, to kind of have a foundation to allow them to move forward?
I think it's mostly that you need to start at the bottom, right? Do something that is close to the system, right? Because in order to be a good programmer, you need to understand how computer works, and they don't work as you expect to, right? I see too many programmers who don't understand memory, right? Who don't understand TLB, IOMMU, who don't understand virtual memory, right? And most of the time it's okay for them, right? But they will never become good programmers, amazing programmers without that, right? So you need to go back to the basics. It's not always fun, I agree, but this is necessary to be great, to become top of the mind, right? So something close to kernel to see something low level and then go up, right? Go up in the stack, right? And today you cannot be a good programmer if you don't know any TypeScript. Yeah, so my advice is like learn C, learn TypeScript, do one functional programming, do learn either Rust or Veg, and go, right? And learn how to change languages, right? Because this is necessary in 2025.
So that's yeah. There's the folks that are part of the community in Brazil. There's lots of questions, so we always try to help them understand that the trying, experimenting, it's really important, and really learning and studying and getting ready, like you described. So
yeah, I went in 2012 in Brazil. or an open source conference that that was in Porto Alegre, and it was pretty cool. I don't think this exists anymore, but it was pretty cool.
Was it a open source kind of conference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I think it got discontinued in 2018. It was pretty cool.
There's a large community over there, and there's lots of conferences, and there's some open source kind of communities and conferences every once in a while as well. And there's a lot of people trying to push several different projects forward. And some of the work that we do there with os programadores is to donate computers to people that want to try to learn. So over the last 3 years, we donate like 75 used computers, and we put Linux in the computers. They have a couple of companies that they help us, and we try to help a little bit as we can, and hopefully get some people in the right track. And talking a little bit more about technology, and think of a parallel universe maybe. What would you think that you'd be working with today if you had not embraced a technology-related career?
I would be an architect, I think.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. Is it something that you ever tried or never?
No, I never tried, but I think I would have done that.
Interesting. Yeah. And was it also interesting that you gave me a pretty quick answer on this, so it looks like you have had some thoughts on this before.
No, when I was very young, right? I wanted to be like everyone wanted to be an astronaut, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted to be an astronomer, right? And then there was a ton of construction work next to my place in Paris, right? And I wanted to be an architect, right? Urbanist, right? There is a place that I want to go, which is Brasilia, right? In the Brazil, as you were talking about, I've never been, right? Because it is very interesting, the work of Niemeyer and so on, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
probably not something that is viewable and usable in real life, but very interesting things.
But yeah, Brazil is like you said, the work of Niemeyer is pretty impressive, and yeah, if you ever had a chance going to Brazil, it would be interesting to allow you to see some of his work over there. There's a nice museum in Rio de Janeiro as well that honors Niemeyer's work, and I think it's worth visiting if you ever have a chance to go to Rio de Janeiro. And there's a lot of fantastic work.
Yeah, I've been to Rio several times.
When was the last time you were there?
2016, I think.
I think they had a museum back then. It's actually in Niterói, which is just across the bay. Somebody has a museum there. I'll send you a link later so you can take a look. And what do you do for fun when you're not working?
Actually, I'm working a lot, right? I like opera. I like a lot what we call bande dessinée, which is a French comic books, which are a bit different, right? What we call Franco-Belgian comic books. I do a lot of Legos, actually. It eases my mind. And yeah, and I love traveling, and I do that.
What's the next trip in the agenda for you?
Probably January back to the US.
Fantastic. And do you have any books or music or movies or games or French wines or anything that you like that you'd like to recommend to the community that's listening to us?
Book, yes. The Name of the Wind, by Patrick Rothfuss, is probably like one of my best book ever. Music, it's very complex music. I listen to a ton of very different type of music, from very classical music to hardcore electro stuff. I listen to almost everything except basically hip hop, and everything that is too auto-tune popular, which bores me. So it's a very difficult question. Probably, probably the song I was listening to just before we started being on the call, which would be, what's the name? Another Love from, I think, Tom Odell.
Adele. Yeah. You're familiar with Jean-Michel Jarre, right?
Yes, of course.
Do you like his kind of music as well?
Yeah, I think it's a bit dated though.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It was interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, it must be
And
the Oxygen. I think the Oxygen album was like
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, it was a top album at the time there, and I remember well. But like I said, it's been a little while, but still good. Still good.
Yes.
So I want to be respectful of your time here, but I feel like it's a great privilege speaking to you, and but we could be talking here for ages and weeks, and there's so much that you can share. But is there a question that I did not ask today that you wish I had asked?
No, this like again, right? It's a bit of part of my philosophy. There is no regrets. Like there is no like you could ask me questions for hours. Like I like the fact that you ask what you feel like it, right? So there is. I am also very like honest with my answers. I answer any type of question, including personal questions. People find it weird, but that's how I do it. So no, that's okay. There is nothing specific you should ask. There is no, as I said, right? Like people say, "Oh, I have a dumb question," and I'm just like, "No, there is no dumb questions, right?
Absolutely.
There are only dumb answers, right? Like we're human, right? We make mistakes. When you don't understand, you need to ask questions, right? You learn by asking, right? So there is no like good question that you should have asked, right?
Yeah.
Like I could think of 25 different topics we could talk about philosophy, religion, software, technology. So no, I like when it's flowing normally.
And I thought of a question that I did not ask, and let me ask the question. VLC, what can you share us about the roadmap? Anything that we're going to see?
We're doing a lot of things on what we call VLC4, which is very complex because we are modifying the core to change some of the most complex issue we've ever had in the synchronization of the clock. But because of that, we're going to have like in VLC4 stuff that we asked for a long time, which is like next frame, previous frame, correct support, dual subtitle, dual audio, subtitles in the black bars, stuff like automatic translation of a lot of languages when you don't know the language and you don't have the subtitle. Some stuff on support for more DVD audios, which is a lost format or Blu-rays, right? So a ton of things is happening, and also like a refresh of the UIs. So yeah, this is a large update of VLC, which is coming around.
Looking forward to the changes and improvements. So I'm sure it'll be absolutely fantastic. And for anyone that wants to follow your work or contact you, what's the best way? Should they try LinkedIn or should they send you an email like I did? What's the best way to be in touch?
Like usually email is the best, right? But like if you want to follow all I'm doing, please. Unfortunately, LinkedIn is less toxic social network, even though it's a lot of bullshit, but at least it's less aggressive. But yeah, probably the best way to follow me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and worked well. And again, just want to take a moment here to, we have been talking to you close to 1 hour here. So thank you so much. It's around 10 p.m. for you. And it's been a privilege speaking with you, and appreciate the time. And just stay with me 2 minutes. I'm going to stop recording. I'll talk to you for another 2 minutes.
Thanks you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Let me push the button here to stop recording.